Hey, Sharyq here. Today we're going to get to part design. Part design is the process we go through to make components for our assemblies. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, we are on Inventor's home screen, but we want to create a new part. We can easily do this by pressing the part button, and it will create us a new part file that we can edit. Now, inherently, there's nothing here, so we have to create something. Let's make a new sketch, and we are given 3 planes, the XY, the YZ, and the XZ plane. Yep, I got that right. So let's always start in the XY plane when you first create a new part. Now, we are given a graph with an x-axis and a y-axis. We want to draw something within these coordinates. You may have noticed that we have a lot of sketch tools up here. The big ones that I can note are the create, the modify, the pattern, and the constraint. These are the ones I use personally the most often. I'm not going to go too in depth on each thing, but I'll give you the general concept. The create tool allows us to just draw within this sketch. The modify tool allows us to modify it. The pattern tool allows us to create patterns based off what we've drawn. And the constraint tool makes sure that each part of our sketch is put together and stuck together right. You'll get these a little bit more once you get more into part design. Let's start with the create tool, and I want to create a rectangular pole with holes. So let's start at the origin and drag the square. Now you notice here that I can make this at whatever dimensions I want, but that's not good if you want to be very exact. Let's start by pressing tab, and you can notice that you can switch between the 2 text boxes given. Let's make this a 1 inch by 1 inch pole with holes. Now let's press enter on this to confirm this, and you'll notice that we've created a square, but there's these things that look a bit strange, like you did not draw these. These are the constraints I was talking about. What we have on all sides of this are parallel constraints. These parallel constraints make sure that this side is always parallel to this side, and this side is always parallel to this side. The other constraint is the dimension constraint, which basically sets the length and the width of this square. If you're using a circle, this would set, say, the radius. If you're doing a line, that would set the length. And this can go on and on. We are not done here. A pole usually has a hole going throughout it. So let's modify this square. We're given a ton of modify tools, such as move, copy, and rotate, but for this, we're going to use offset, which does exactly as it says. It offsets the square and creates another one. So let's make this 0.04 inches. Let's confirm that, and it's created another square with more constraints, such as the parallel constraint and other dimension constraints. I think we're done here, so let's finish the sketch. But currently, this square only lives in 1 dimension, and we live in a 3-dimensional world. So let's go on to the 3D modeling tools. They are very similar to the sketching tools, so if you understand them in one, you'll understand them in the other. But you notice that there's some different tools. Let's start with the most notable, the Extrude tools. Extrude is such a big tool that I could honestly go on talking about this for days and days, but let's keep it simple for now. I'm just going to cover the big one. The regular extrude extrudes a face into the other dimension. That sounds like some weird sci-fi plot, but let's go on with it. So let's select this face, the face between the 2 squares, and you see that it's extended this into the other dimension. Now, we want to set this to something longer, because poles are usually pretty long. I'm going to make this 28 inches long. And as you can see, now this pole is 28 inches long. But it's quite daft. I want to add something to it. Maybe adding a couple of patterns could make it look nice. Let's create another sketch, this time in the YZ plane. Let's grab our point tool, which basically puts down a point wherever you want. Let's press tab, set the coordinates to -0.5, and 0.5. And as you can see, the X and the Y coordinates are here. You press enter and now you have a point. Now, this point inherently does nothing because it still lives in its 2D world. But now we can modify it using the hole tool. Again, 3D modifying tools, I could go on for days and days. But for now, let's stick to the big ones, and hole is the most notable. We can create a hole wherever we click. We create that point to make the hole easy. Pole hole. Right now, I have it set to be 0.163 in diameter. We can create this hole, and wow, it goes through the whole thing. But now, it's unsymmetrical, and we want to make this to be a symmetrical pole. So let's click the pattern tool. Let's select the feature known as the hole, and let's click the direction. Let's click this face over here, the face that we created earlier, that we have extruded. And now the pattern is going to go in this direction. As you see, there's already a green highlighted hole created because we have 2 in the pattern slot. But we don't want just 2 holes. I'm going to make 28 holes, and this will go completely along our pole, creating a repeating pattern throughout it. You can press OK now, and wow, you've created a pole with holes. Now, we want to save our glorious creation. Sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. We want to save this as, and then save it as whatever you want to name it. Just make sure to keep the IPT file part, as that stands for Autodesk Inventor parts. Label this whatever you want. I'm going to name this 28-inch pole with holes. And save it. Congratulations, you have made your first part. You can do the top side if you would like, but you have learned the basics of making sketches. As a recap, you've learned create tools, you've learned basics of modify tools, pattern tools, and constraint tools. In the 3D area, you've learned the basics of extrusion and the basics of modify and pattern. For our next tutorial, we'll go into a lot more depth about these. You may still have a lot of questions about them. But until then, thanks for watching. See you next time.